They were eating Kilishi made from dead bodies. But they never knew. A story written by Christy Midnight Tales. Nurse Blessing had always dreamed of helping people. From the moment she finished nursing school, she imagined herself running a small clinic in her community, a place where the sick could find care, where hope wasn't measured by how much money someone had. But dreams, she would soon learn, often clash brutally with reality. Her clinic was a shadow of what she had imagined. The paint peeled from the walls, leaving streaks like the veins of some tired, dying creature. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained, water dripping into old buckets that sat around the ward. And the rats, oh, the rats, they didn't just skitter across the floor. They had nests in cupboards, behind the broken cabinets, and under the worn-out beds. Nurse Blessing had tried everything: poison, traps, chasing them away, but when money was scarce, nothing worked for long. She couldn't even make her hair, which made her cut it off, carrying skin cut about town. Staff had left one by one. Some went to better hospitals, others simply gave up. She was left mostly alone. Bills piled up: electricity bills, water bills, the taxes she never had time to pay, all reminders that keeping a hospital alive was more than just healing the sick. It was surviving. She tried to get help. High-profile sponsors, people who had the money and influence to rescue her clinic from decay. She dressed sharply, practiced her pitch, and spoke from the heart, appealing to every ounce of empathy she could muster. She smiled at them, begged, promised the impact they could make. But one by one, they turned her down. Some didn't even hide their disinterest. "Not our area," they said. "We have other commitments." One man laughed at her, said she should try a different career. The rejection burned. She left those meetings with her chest tight, stomach knotting, heart sinking a little further each time. Every no felt like another nail in the coffin of her clinic, in her dream, in herself. Then came the day that changed everything. It was late evening, and Blessing was counting the small cash she had managed to scrape together from patient fees. She had barely enough to pay the night guard. Outside, the streets were quiet, the city winding down. She knew she was running out of options. That's when she met him, the aboki. A man who sold Kilishi on the corner of the street, a familiar figure in the neighborhood, known for his sharp tongue and clever hands. She had gone out to unwind the thought she had been bearing in mind. He noticed her frustration, the way she clutched her bag as though it were holding her last bit of hope. "Madam, you look tired," he said, smiling. She laughed bitterly. "You could say that. I run a hospital, but it's dying faster than I can keep it alive." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Maybe I can help. I know ways to make money. Fast money." Her stomach tightened. Fast money usually came with strings attached, and in her life lately, strings could strangle. But desperation has a way of dulling caution. "What do you mean?" He told her his plan carefully. Bodies abandoned at the hospital. Patients who had been left behind for weeks because families couldn't pay their bills, untouched and unnoticed. He could make Kilishi from them, he said, seasoned, cooked, garnished, so good that people would buy it like any other delicacy. He promised that she could have part of the profits, enough to rebuild her clinic, pay her staff, finally turn her hospital into the place she had always dreamed of. Blessing didn't reply immediately. Her heart raced, her hands shook. The idea was unthinkable. But when she looked around her clinic, the broken tiles, the leaky roof, the rats scurrying across the floor, the empty shelves, the unpaid staff, something inside her began to twist. "And no one will know?" she asked cautiously. "Not if you follow my instructions," the aboki said. "Just let me handle it. You do what you do best, run your clinic, heal the sick, manage the money. I will take care of the rest." She hesitated. Her stomach churned with guilt, fear, and something else. That little flicker of hope she had been clinging to for years. By the time she walked back to her clinic that night, her mind was made up. She didn't know the exact line she was crossing. Maybe she would tell herself it wasn't crossing any line at all. After all, these were bodies already abandoned, forgotten. No one would ever miss them, right? The next morning, she went about her usual routine, tending to the few patients who managed to stay, taking notes, checking supplies. But behind her eyes, a storm had begun. A secret decision had been made, and from that moment on, Nurse Blessing's life and the fate of her clinic was no longer ordinary. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. A beginning that would bring her success, yes, but at a cost far higher than she could imagine. The aboki was punctual, disciplined, and disturbingly efficient. He arrived at night, carrying his tools and supplies, moving silently through the clinic corridors. Blessing pretended to be sleeping in her small office, the dim light from the street flickering against the cracked windows. She didn't need to see what he did. He followed the plan, and he followed it well. The first batch of Kilishi was prepared with precision. The aboki had seasoned it expertly, garnished it carefully, and packaged it in a way that made it stand out from the regular delicacy sold on the streets. Nurse Blessing was even tempted to taste it when she first saw it, but she remembered it was Kilishi made from her mortuary. When the first customers bought it, they raved. Word spread quickly. Soon, orders came from farther away, even abroad. People wanted more, and more. Blessing watched the clinic transform before her eyes. Walls were repainted, broken equipment replaced, and her staffs, paid in full. The other staffs that left because of lack of funds, came back when they heard the news, but Nurse Blessing refused. For the first time in months, she smiled again. The rats, once bold enough to run along the counters, were nowhere to be seen. She finally felt that she was in control, but control was a fragile illusion. Every time she counted the money, every time she handed over a paycheck, every time she saw her newly painted walls, a sliver of guilt crept into her chest. The clinic was thriving, but it was built on a foundation no one should ever build upon. And still, she justified it. These were bodies abandoned, left to rot because families couldn't pay. No one would miss them, she told herself. The aboki noticed her hesitation. One evening, as he prepared another batch, he leaned against the counter and said, "You worry too much, nurse. The world only sees what it wants to see. We are giving people food they love, and you're keeping your dream alive." He persuaded her not to think much about it. After all, they were making their money, and she nodded, yes. Nurse Blessing had already started making her hair. The flow of money was coming in like no man's business. Then came the first warning. One of her nurses, a young woman named Ifeoma, mentioned something strange she had noticed. "I saw a shadow," he said. "We should stop eating them." "I don't know, what does that mean? Or maybe I'm imagining it." Blessing smiled weakly. "You're tired, Ifeoma. Go home, get some rest." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Even as the clinic prospered, even as the walls were rebuilt and the staff were paid, the shadow of what they had done grew heavier each day. And then the news came, the first real ripple of danger. The aboki had been seen, carrying something inside a sack bag, in the dead of night. People whispered. Suspicion grew. Blessing felt her stomach drop. She had always known the risk, but seeing it so close, feeling it touch her world, it was different. Yet, for all the fear, she couldn't turn back. The clinic depended on this. And so, she told herself, she would endure, she would continue. Few weeks later, they had already used up all the bodies, and Nurse Blessing was beginning to get restless. The money was flowing in, yes. But the supply had stopped. People from far and near were calling for more Kilishi. The aboki, her partner in crime, was already getting impatient. He would come to her office and say, "Madam, wetin we go do now? Market done dry." "Oh," she would snap at him, "calm down. I will think of something." But even she didn't believe it. For days, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moments in her head, the first time they took the risk, how it felt to touch foreign currency, and how her trembling hands later got used to it. It was supposed to be one time. But greed is never satisfied. One afternoon, as she sat in her office, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't know. "Hello," she said cautiously. A woman's voice came through, official and polite. "Good afternoon, Nurse Blessing. This is Matron Linda from St. David's Clinic. I got your contact from the state directory. Our morgue is completely full and we heard yours is still functional. Can we bring some of our abandoned bodies to you?" Blessing's heart skipped. She froze for a second before she managed to reply, Yes, you can. My morgue still has space." The voice on the phone continued, "These are bodies families have abandoned for months, so please keep them well, please." Blessing smiled slowly. "Don't worry, Ma. I will handle everything." When the call ended, she leaned back on her chair. "What God cannot do does not exist," she murmured. That evening, she met the aboki outside, beside the back gate where he usually roasted his Kilishi. "Good news," she said, folding her arms proudly. "More supply is coming." The aboki dropped his knife and grinned, his teeth brown from kola nut. "Oh, alhamdulillah, God is good." They both laughed, a sound that carried through the quiet street, mocking the heavens. 2 days later, the ambulance from St. David's arrived. They brought in 50 bodies, covered, cold, and tagged as unclaimed. Blessing watched as they were rolled into her morgue. For the first time in weeks, she felt excitement again. Money would start flowing. Her secret partner would be happy. Her life would continue shining, but what she didn't know was that her time was ticking. That night, the aboki started again. The familiar sound of cutting flesh filled the small room behind the hospital. The air smelled of chemicals and something darker. Every morning, she would wear her white uniform, smile at patients, and preach cleanliness, while behind her walls, death had become a business. One evening, while she was counting money with trembling fingers, she said, "Aboki, when we're done with this last batch, we will travel. Maybe Dubai or Ghana." The man laughed. "No problem, Madam Blessing. You too fine to end here." But life had other plans. The next week came quietly, no warning, no sign from heaven, no strange dream to alert her. She was sitting in her office, sipping cold malt, when she heard a knock at the door. Her new assistant opened it and whispered, "Ma, some people from St. David's are here." Blessing frowned. "Tell them I will be with them soon." But before the girl could turn, a group of men and women walked in, one in a lab coat, another holding documents, and 2 men in uniform. They looked tense. "Good evening," the woman in front greeted. "We came to retrieve the bodies we kept in your morgue." Some families came forward for burial. Blessing's hand froze around her cup. "What?" She stammered. "Yes," the matron said calmly. "We called yesterday but your line wasn't reachable, so we came directly. Please, show us the morgue." Her mouth went dry. She looked at the aboki, who stood by the doorway, about to do his night business at the morgue, speechless. Her heart began to pound so loudly she thought they could hear it. The key. "The key is missing," she muttered, but it was too late. The woman had already instructed the men to force it open. The sound of the metal latch breaking echoed through the corridor. Then came silence, followed by screams. The bodies they expected were nowhere to be found. Only stains, ashes, and remnants that told a story too dark to explain. The police officers was contacted immediately. The matron turned slowly to Blessing, her eyes wide. "What have you done?" she whispered. Blessing couldn't speak. Her legs gave way, she fell to the ground, her eyes empty, as the aboki tried to run but was dragged back by some men. The secret was out. The same hands that once saved lives had become tools of horror. As they were led out of the hospital that evening, a small crowd had already gathered. Some people were crying, others were recording. Blessing kept shaking her head, whispering, "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to save my clinic." But no one cared anymore. The same community that once mocked her poverty now mocked her. By the next morning, every major blog had the same headline: "Nurse and aboki arrested for using human corpses in Kilishi production." Some said it was a lie. Others said it was karma. Inside the interrogation room, the air was cold. The flickering bulb above her head made everything look even more haunting. Across from her sat a detective, calm and focused. He spoke softly but with the weight of authority. "Madam Blessing, we've taken statements from the staff and even your partner, the man you call aboki. He has already confessed." She lifted her head weakly. He confessed?" "Yes," the man replied. "He said you planned everything. You knew what you were doing." Blessing's heart broke. The same man she trusted, the one who shared in her dark secret, had turned against her to save himself. "I didn't plan it," she whispered. "It just happened. I was desperate. Nobody wanted to help me." But the detective only sighed. Desperation is not an excuse for evil. The moment he said that, she broke down completely. She screamed, sobbed, begged, but the walls of that room had heard too many cries to care. Days turned into weeks. She and the aboki were charged to court. When they were brought to court for the first time, the crowd outside nearly tore them apart. "Wicked woman." Someone shouted, "You made people eat human flesh just for money." Another yelled. Blessing couldn't even lift her face. She was no longer Nurse Blessing, she was the face of horror. The white uniform that once symbolized healing had become the garment of shame. During the trial, Her lawyer tried to argue that she was mentally unstable due to financial stress, but the evidence was too clear, and the judge too stern. On the final day of judgment, the courtroom was silent. Blessing stood, weak and shaking, her wrists cuffed tightly in front of her. The aboki stood beside her, his face blank, as though his soul had already left his body. The judge adjusted his glasses, looked down at them, and read slowly. This court finds both defendants guilty of multiple counts of illegal human use, desecration of corpses, and acts against humanity. You are hereby sentenced to death by firing squad. The sound of the gavel hitting the desk echoed like thunder. Blessing's knees buckled. The aboki started shouting prayers in Hausa, crying for mercy. But mercy had left them long ago. When they were dragged out of the courtroom, Blessing screamed, "Tell them I didn't mean to do it. Tell them I was just trying to save my hospital." But the crowd only shouted louder. Some threw stones, others spat. One said she was even using the Kilishi to drink slim tea. She was put in her cell that night. The next morning, they came for she and the aboki, the sound of the keys, the echo of boots on the cement floor. It was time. Outside, the sun was rising, casting a red-orange glow over the field. Soldiers stood in position, rifles ready. Blessing was led out with trembling legs. The aboki was beside her, still praying under his breath. They were tied to the stakes, blindfolded, facing the horizon. A priest murmured a short prayer for their souls, though he too looked uneasy. When the commander raised his hand, Blessing whispered her last words, "If only they had helped me, I would never have become this monster." The rifles clicked. Aim. Her chest rose one last time as tears rolled down her cheeks. Fire. The shots rang out, echoing through the early morning air, then silence. The wind blew softly across the field, carrying away the dust and the echoes of two lost souls. Later that day, the news carried their photos with captions like "She lost her soul because of greed." And that was how Blessing and her aboki business partner ended up. No matter what life throws at you, do not use it as a yardstick to do evil. Just like Blessing and her partner in crime, be patient with God and always pray. Thanks for watching, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories. See you again in my next story.